My name is Father Alexander Sherbrick, and I am the parish priest of St Patrick's in Soho in London, where I have been since 2001. Some 4 years ago, I went to Arundel Cathedral and I saw an exhibition there of Eucharistic miracles, and it was fascinating, it was beautiful, it was very well portrayed, and it reintroduced me to something which is very important in our Catholic life. At the time, I didn't think much about how it came to be constructed, but I did see the picture of a young Italian boy, and he had been responsible for this. Anyway, in the last perhaps 6 months, I have become much more aware of this young man who is now known as Blessed Carlo Acutis, and his life and his contribution to the proclamation of the gospel. We haven't had many saints who have been born in London. You can visit the place that Cardinal Newman was born. It's now in the city of London, the heart of the square mile. Obviously, many of our martyrs were probably born in London, but recent times, not many saints. Carlo was born in London. He was baptized on the 18th of May in the church of Our Lady of Dolours in the Fulham Road. He didn't live in London for very long, perhaps only 6 months, and he never returned to London. As part of this journey of promoting Eucharistic adoration at St Patrick's, I was given the joy of being able to speak to his mother on the telephone. And as you look at his mother, I think it's extraordinary. Two things. First of all, this was a woman who said, I hardly ever went to church until Carlo started to take me. She now goes every day, prays the rosary every day, goes to adoration every day. And I thought, how extraordinary to see how this young boy had evangelized his mother. The second thing that really struck me is how she speaks very beautifully about how she wants Carlo to come back to London, where he was born, to speak to the young people of London, to speak to the young people of St Patrick's at Soho, but also to speak very much to the Anglosphere. So his mother speaks of how she really feels that from heaven, Carlo is asking for this to happen.
Carlo was born in London because my husband was working in a merchant bank. And Carlo, of course, after 1 year that we have got married in 1990, in 1991, Carlo was born the 3rd of May of 1991. So in a certain way, he had a special connection with London. And also because my mother-in-law is half English and half Polish. So the fact that she's half Polish and half English is also a further connection with these two big nations.
Cosa ne pensa del Beato Carlo che torna a Londra, incontra i giovani di Soho e dà loro speranza e gioia per il futuro?
Carlo was a witness of God, you know, of the love of God. So he witnessed the love of God in his life. So it's a hope, it's a sign of hope, because we have to understand that we have been created for God. So to understand this in our life means to become happy, to become a realized person. And this is the secret. So the fact that he will meet these young people in Soho, in a certain way come back in London, no? Because unfortunately Carlo, after he was born in London, and then he never he never had the chance to visit when he was grown London, no? So in a certain ways, he returned in London, in England, but beatified. No? It's strange, no? That he didn't return before. But I think it's a sign of his connection with England, because also the exhibition on Eucharistic miracle of Carlo is going around England. So also this, I think, is a big sign. England and United States especially. So I think Carlo has a big connection with the Anglophone countries because probably of his English roots. My grandmother was born in New York. So, I mean, probably this is a big connection.
There are many, many things that one could say about him, but I think just from a very personal point of view, I happened to go to Italy just after his beatification in Assisi, and I was able to visit the church of the Spogliamento. That is the church where St. Francis stripped himself of his garments in front of the Bishop of Assisi. Anyway, there you see the open coffin of Blessed Carlo. And as you look at him, you see this very youthful-like young man. He was 15 when he died of leukemia. But as you look at him, you think, this boy I could have met playing a game of football down the road. So he is contemporary. He is fun, he laughs, but also his life was infinitely attractive as you find out more about it.
Carlo had a very ordinary life, but like each one of us, if we have every one of us has an ordinary life, but if we allow the absolute to enter inside our life, even an ordinary life can become extraordinary, because when we open the doors to Jesus, to the grace, each life become extraordinary. So Carlo had this merit to have understood that without Jesus we cannot do anything. And the great merit of Carlo is that he really understood this. He used to go each day to the Mass, to the celebration, to nourish himself with the Holy Eucharist, which is the source of love, the source of our sainthood, because in the Blessed Sacrament we have the real presence of God. So when we eat the Eucharist, because Jesus transforms us, Jesus make us always more similar to him. So this is very important, because Jesus wants our free will. So he doesn't want to oblige us to become to love him. But when we open ourselves, we open our doors to Jesus, he can do fantastic things. So Carlo had this merit. And of course, like Saint Teresa of Jesus, the little Teresina, no? She used to say that she wanted at the beginning to do many things. She wanted to become a missionary. She wanted to go there and to do this. But she understood that the most important thing is to love. The love. Everything you do, if you do loving, is fantastic. So Carlo, in a certain way, was a disciple of this saint, this little saint, Teresa. And understood that even the most, normal things, if you do loving, with loving God and loving our friend, our brother and sister, so everything can become really extraordinary.
So there was something incredibly human about him. But also, of course, what is so extraordinary about him is that this young boy has brought many to know the love of God. And what was absolutely central to Blessed Carlo is the call before anything else to love God, and to love God in Eucharistic adoration. And through that basic encounter, that dialogue, that meeting, then we come to know who we truly are. When we are created at the beginning of time, we believe that we are created as individuals, our own beauty, our own character, our own definition, if you like. And many of the forces of our modern world want to coerce us into being the same, the herd mentality, the group mentality. And as a result, it becomes much more difficult to establish your personal identity with God. It's rather like when you look at fashion. I live in Soho, and you see fashion all the time. It's fascinating, but there's always a sameness. There's nothing particularly unique in how people dress. And that speaks very powerfully of how coercive fashion and group and herd mentality is, which takes us away from the gospel. And it is that individuality that God gives us and that so much of the world wants to destroy. Carlo, through his apostolate of spreading Eucharistic adoration, of the Eucharistic miracles, is an extraordinary sign for our times.
Carlo used to say that the Eucharist is my highway to heaven. And he understood that in the Eucharist there is really the source of the grace, because the Eucharist, in the Eucharist, in the Blessed Sacrament, there is the real presence of God, no? And God promised us, Jesus promised us in the Gospel, I will be with you till the end of the world. And he maintained this promise. He stays with us. But we know for the faith that here there is in the consecrated host, there is the real presence of God. It's not a symbolic presence. It's not a sign of his presence, but it's the real presence of God. So that is incredible. For Carlo was incredible. Carlo used to live his life at the presence of God, each minute of his life. So this was the extraordinary of Carlo.
One of the greatest joys of my priesthood, and also as a seminarian, is that I was able to have spent much time with the Missionaries of Charity, and in particular before she died with Mother Teresa of Calcutta, both here in London, in Rome, and most significantly in Calcutta. And being with her, in one particular case for a concentrated 2 weeks, I was able to watch her very closely. And I always remember watching her that all the time she was fixated to know where the Blessed Sacrament was. If she was going to a church that she hadn't been to before, if she was going to one of her homes, if she was walking through the main house in Calicut, she would always stop at the Blessed Sacrament. So she was absolutely obsessed by allowing Jesus to work through her. And therefore, when we look at the work of St. Teresa of Calcutta, we see a deep synergy, if you like, between the caring of the poor, the poorest of the poor, and the presence of Christ and the Blessed Sacrament. Blessed Carlo is another example of St. Teresa of Calcutta. What I see in him, I see, and we can see in so many saints in the life of a church who have had a deep Eucharistic spirituality. It is through being with the Blessed Sacrament, being with Jesus, that the two fall in love with each other. Christ has already fallen in love with us, and we are called to fall in love with him. And it is through that intimacy, if you like, what Mother Teresa used to say, she talked about cleaving to Christ, becoming literally the spouse of Christ. And when Carlo meets God in that Eucharistic moment, he then takes him into the marketplace. And that is the work for us as Christians in this time, more than ever. We often speak about thirst and hunger. Yes, most certainly so. People have a deep thirst for Christ without necessarily knowing it. But when we meet him, we know that we've met beauty. Anyway, the new evangelization, that call to introduce other people to Christ. St. John Paul II very deliberately put Our Lady of Guadalupe as the light of a new evangelization. Also, she is, of course, the patroness of a sanctity of life. And the two great challenges, perhaps before us, enshrined in that, is how do we speak more persuasively to the people of our time, and particularly young Christians, of the call to uphold, to support, to promote the sanctity of life, because that is being questioned at so many parts of the secular debate. But secondly, that call to speak to others of Christ, the new evangelization. Now that can be done by wonderful programs and strategies, but ultimately it is about conversing with someone in the street, someone at the bus stop, someone in the cinema, and say, do you know Christ? Do you want to come into a personal relationship with Christ? Now, more than ever, with the darkness in many ways that we have been living through, we need to proclaim the light, the joy, and the peace that is knowing Jesus Christ.
Carlo is a big witness of this in this time, especially because he is an influencer of God in a certain way. It's a time where there are a lot of influencer how to dress, what to eat, what to hear in the music to hear. I mean, a lot of important things. I mean, I don't want to criticize, but not essential. And Carlo, in a certain way, is essential, no? He said, first God, no? Not me, but God. In Italian sound, non io, ma Dio. So it's very important. And it's very important to put God at the first place in our life. And when we put God after all the things, so we forget that God exists. This is a failure existence. Is a failure in our life because we have been created for God. So to fulfill our mission, the mission that God since the beginning for each one of us as think is to love God overall. This is the most important things, and to do this means to be a happy person. Because I mean, life presents a lot of. There are a lot of illness, problems, and the dead, unfortunately, still is here. But looking at Jesus, we understand that everything is for the future. No, it's a very short time we have in the earth. No. And what is important is really to understand that we have been created for something else. We have been created for the eternity, for the infinite, not for the infinitive world. So to understand this means to become an happy person. I hope that this presence of Carlo in England will be helpful and will help this person to understand that the grace of God is among us. Through the sacrament, God decided to give us His grace. And to live these sacraments means to approach ourselves in a source of grace, because really God is always with us. This is what Carlo understood and what he lived and witnessed to the world. Thank you for everybody. I ensure you my prayers and ask you also to pray for the canonization of Carlo.
Sono destinata a morire.